This meeting will now come to order, and I will read the EPSB mission statement. The Education Professional Standards Board, in full collaboration and cooperation with its education partners, promotes high levels of student achievement by establishing and enforcing rigorous professional standards for preparation, certification, and responsible and ethical behavior of all professional educators in Kentucky. On July 19th, Governor Beshear issued Executive Order 2023-411 appointing James Cousins to the EPSB to represent private post-secondary institutions. Leah Sharp from the Office of Legal Services will administer the oath to Dr. Cousins to swear him into EPSB. Ms. Sharp, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. Dr. Cousins, I will read the oath in its entirety and ask you to raise your right hand, and then I'll ask you to swear or affirm once I'm complete. I do solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute, to the best of my ability, the office of board member of the Education Professional Standards Board according to law. And I do further solemnly swear or affirm that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within this state, nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. Dr. Cousins?
I do.
Thank you. Swearing is complete, Dr.
Thank you so much. Yes. Welcome, Dr. Cousins. If you don't mind, if you'll take a few moments just to introduce yourself to the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm James Cousins. Most recently, I'm here representing ICU, the Association of Independent Kentucky Colleges and Universities. I'm the provost at Kentucky Wesleyan College, a position I've held for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I was in the dean's office at Western Michigan University, where I was also a history professor. And prior to that, I was a graduate student at the great University of Kentucky. So I've been back and forth to Kentucky for the past 20 years. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you. Serving as board secretary is Sharon Chesser. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Here. Present.
James Cousins,
Here.
Elijah Edwards,
Here.
TJ Pryor,
Here.
Kathy Gunn, Priscilla Keller, Amy Lingo,
Here.
Jacqueline Mayfield,
Here.
Corinne Murphy,
Here.
Meredith Pittman,
Here.
Lisa Brzezinski,
Here.
Neil,
Here.
Vice Chair Weidman,
Here.
Chair Mitchell,
Here.
have quorum.
Thank you. And did anyone sign up for open speak? All right. Well, at this time, Robin Kinney, Associate Commissioner of KDE's Office of Finance and Operations, has been appointed as Interim Commissioner of Education and joins us today as Executive Secretary to the EPSB. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm proud to say that I have survived my first week. I was appointed by the Kentucky Board of Education effective September 30th. And it's been a very, very busy week here at the Department of Education, but it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I thought it might be helpful if I tell you a little bit about myself. I am a state government employee for more than 25 years, but I've also worked in the private sector in a legal capacity. I'm an attorney by training and education. And I've primarily worked in the areas of operations and logistics and policy. I served as a general counsel here in state government, but then decided that I didn't want to always be in the legal arena, and have used that background and training to my benefit, I think, and to the benefit of the agencies that I serve across state government. Most recently, I have been the Associate Commissioner of the Office of Finance and Operations here at KDE. I've served in this capacity for the last 8 years. And during that time, I've learned a lot I've learned a lot from quality educators really across the Commonwealth, including the ones here at KDE. We have a lot of really good educators here at KDE. And so when I was first approached about taking this position on an interim capacity, I looked around and saw all the support that I would have from the people here at KDE that really know the instructional, programmatic, and teacher side of things and administrator side of things. And then using the benefit of my operations and logistics, I felt like I could be successful. I described the work that I did in the Office of Finance and Operations as a litany of B words. So budgets and bucks. So they're the people that do the budgets, the biennial budget. And of course, we're getting ready to start a General Assembly session, and we'll be looking at the biennial budget. The Kentucky Board of Education has adopted a list of priorities for that budget request, and we'll be advocating for those. We also do bodies, meaning the people here at KDE, the working to assist in hiring the most quality staff here. And of course, EPSB is helping in that capacity because you all help us find the bodies to go out into our local school districts through your certification process. We also do buildings, so the asset control and all the facilities work that happen in our 171 school districts, KSB and KSD. And then let's throw in a little breakfast because I also had school, all the school food service programs for all the schools. So a very broad group that I worked with in OFO, and now I've just taken that and I've exploded it even more with the work that I'll be doing across the department. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'll save a few little closing remarks for the end, but I know you have a very, very busy schedule, as you always do. I've looked at your agenda, and I know that you're very busy. But I have with me today Lou Young.
Good morning.
Lou is the Vice Chair of the Kentucky Board of Education, and she's going to spend a few minutes talking about our commissioner search process.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Robin, and good morning, Chair Mitchell, Vice Chair Weidman, and the EPSB. We're really appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning. And as you can hear, we have made an absolutely wonderful selection as interim commissioner. All is well with Robin in that seat, and we appreciate her with great sincerity for being willing to take on all the additional responsibility that comes in this interim period. So I'm here this morning with our senior policy advisor, Dr. Brewer, to ask you guys a couple of questions by way of engaging you and your thinking around what we would be should be looking for in the next commissioner of education. In terms of process, we have let the request for proposals, it's out on the street, as they say. In fact, actually closed the 30th, maybe.
It's already closed.
Okay, so we are looking, using that process to find search firms that will assist us in making the selection, finding those high quality individuals from across the country. So it will be a national search, also encouraging Kentucky applicants as well, of course, but not unlike the process we went through in 2020 when we found Commissioner Glass, although that was during a global pandemic. So I have different aspirations for this process, frankly. So once the vetting process around those applications is complete, we will then be ready to move forward to select that firm. It's likely that that may happen in a special call board meeting because we meet every other month like you do. So we actually meet in this room tomorrow and Wednesday. So we're not scheduled to meet again until December. So at some point in between, we'll select that firm and then we're ready to go. We're ready to jump in and get started. But we're using this interim period to have these conversations, to hear from those partner groups that Chair Mitchell mentioned in his introduction, as well as Kentucky at large. So we're going to put out opportunities. In fact, there's already a website up for the search that explains the process, and it'll be chronicled all the way through. So you have access to that website if you're curious about that process along the way. Chair Mitchell did ask about the process of confirmation. That is a new wrinkle for us. The General Assembly did approve a bill that requires the new Commissioner of Education, or at any time a Commissioner of Education receives a new contract, that he or she be confirmed by the Senate. That's not unlike the confirmation process that you guys go through and that we as the state board go through. Usually happens around sine die during the regular any session of the General Assembly, but could happen as early as the time they gavel in. So it's new for us. We're not sure exactly how that's going to go. But Chair Robinson and I have been scheduling meetings with members of the General Assembly so we can have those conversations up front. We don't want to be caught off guard in that process. We want to be as proactive about that as possible. We're not sure, you may have seen in the news releases, we're not sure whether the interim will be called before the body for confirmation or not, but we're quite confident that she will stand that test well, and that we will be able to continue on if in fact we do go as late as April of 2024 in the search process. Robin and her team chronicled the last search for us, and it was about 8 months, start to finish, despite a global pandemic. We had a really excellent applicant pool. We're certainly hoping for the same this time around. No guesses about that, only that we're optimistic that we will have a good applicant pool and that we'll be ready to have someone in place no later than July 1st, 2024, perhaps even sooner, depending on the market. So I'd be happy to answer process questions. Then I will get right to the receiving of information from you. So Dr. Brewer is going to capture your notes as close to verbatim as she can type. And I'm going to give you the 2 questions so you can be thinking about them. We don't care if they're in lockstep order. So the first one are, what are some qualities you'd like to see in a new commissioner? Thinking about any commissioners that you've worked with, from Dr. Glass to Dr. Lewis to Dr. Pruitt. I go back pretty far, so I should stop naming them. I go all the way back to Tom Boyson, so the first commissioner of education in Kentucky. So thinking about those qualities and thinking about it from your perspective as a member of the Education Professional Standards Board, but also as your perspective in higher ed or in P12 or whatever role group you represent on the board. So thinking about that in broad terms. And then the second question is commensurate. What should the new commissioner focus on their first year on the job? So really kind of helping us think around near-term priorities and some urgency around the work. So give you a couple minutes to marinate those 2 ideas. And Chair Mitchell, I don't know if folks called to the chair to respond. I'm personally really comfortable if you guys want to just jump in okay, great.
Yes.
And Meredith and I will keep up in terms of the note. I'm just going to actively listen. So try to make eye contact and really hear what you're saying to us. And then by way of commitment, I'll be sharing this information back with the full board. We're doing this with more than a dozen bodies. Somebody will be at LSEC tomorrow. We've been in all the advisory groups. We've been with the School Boards Association. We work with the United We Learn Council. So lots and lots of constituencies will be tapped in this very intentional way. And then we'll try to synthesize your responses as we bring this information together and back to the board. So we will convey it both in the raw data form as well as massaged with the information from all the other groups.
Who'd like to start us off?
I taught high school, so I'm not afraid to call on somebody.
I can break the ice.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, as far as qualities, one thing that I feel like is important as far as the work that we've started here would be someone that's also passionate about competency-based and performance-based assessments. As we looked at other routes with the praxis last year, I feel like someone with knowledge and understanding and wanting to honor people's experiences and lived experience and knowledge versus just standardized testing is going to be important. And then what should they focus on? One thing that I would really love to see continued is really the concept that I feel like Dr. Glass was passionate about, and I would love for that quality to remain because he was a very big advocate of this. But as far as agency goes, I know that the commissioner will hold power, which is fantastic. But I think that our previous commissioner did a fabulous job of providing agency and not just solely making decisions himself, but allowing people with the knowledge to have roles in that decision making, because one person alone, we don't hold all of the skills or expertise. So really putting the people who have the knowledge, they're the ones that hold the power. So bringing them to the table.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's all I can do to not comment on all those things and say amen, but that would be breaking the rules. I will refrain.
I have a focus area. I think the recent working conditions surveys have really shown that educators are, I mean, and we're seeing an increase in the shortage, leaving the profession. And really what struck me the most were the increases in dissatisfaction with job and mental health amongst educators, and how many educators are worried about the mental health of their fellow their coworkers in addition to themselves. So I think that it was really stark to see the
Right.
increase in those things. So I think that should be a major focus of what we should be addressing, because we're also seeing the increase in waivers and the teacher shortage obviously is a huge focus, but I think that the mental health and the job dissatisfaction is tied into that.
Thanks. And that's really powerful coming from EPSB in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to see someone who is knowledgeable in helping the schools of Kentucky work with behavior concerns. Because there's a lot going on, and when you're in the classroom, a lot of our hands are tied, and we just need some support in those areas. And also someone who is open-minded and who can look into diversity and equitable with all students, all staff, and someone who is comfortable in that area, who has actually done that type of work to bring new ideals to the table.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for giving us a voice. I would be
Sure.
remiss if I didn't speak on behalf of career and technical educators across the state.
Yeah.
That career and technical education needs to be a focus for the next commissioner. It continues to grow and expand, and the attraction of industry professionals to teaching in order to be able to provide that skilled and technical experience on behalf of our students.
Thank you.
I would be remiss to not mention just all the great work we've done in the past few years with Go Teach Kentucky and Educators Rising, and just really recruiting the next generation of educators. I'm lucky at my school to teach our teaching and learning pathway courses, and we partner with NKU's College of Education. And it's so great to have these young people who are considering joining the greatest profession there is. But when we did a lesson on teacher salaries just recently, I'm in Northern Kentucky, so they're 5 minutes from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And they're seeing the differences between, like, why would I teach in Kentucky? And I've got these incredible students that I want to call my colleagues here in our Commonwealth one day. So just any work the commissioner can do to really continue this great initiatives we're doing, but also in the larger picture, just how do we attract and retain the best of the best in our Commonwealth?
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Might as well get this over with. I come from a different perspective. While all of you all are in different fields, I represent board members of the state.
Mm.
Okay, my big focus is still literacy. To me, it's important. I see so many third graders that cannot read on level, and all we're doing is delaying the fact as they get older and proceed to the next grade, they still can't read. They can't write. They can't. We need to get back. I want somebody to care about getting back to basics, getting back, while all these other issues are great, because as a board member, we vote on these issues every year, each year. And I appreciate all what has been said, but I feel like our kids have lost what they need to know, because not only of the pandemic, and we cannot keep blaming the pandemic for what has happened. We have to make sure our kids can read and math on level, and so many of them can't, and we're cheating them. And I just want to see somebody that's got some, not nerve, but some get-go that says to these teachers and superintendents, we've got to get these kids on track because all of us, we know all of them's not going to go to college. And while the ATC in Nelson County is wonderful, I think they're all wonderful. They serve a purpose, but we still, if you can't read directions, you cannot do your job. So that's my beef. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll kind of tie in what they've spoken about as well, but just understanding, similar to what Ms. Mayfield was talking about, like that it's more than just teachers and it's more than just the school. We've got to get our communities involved, and there seems to be a big disconnect from the respect of the education profession from 20, 30 years ago to now. And I don't know if it's a marketing PR facelift or much deeper than that. I know there have been some cohorts and town halls around the state. But, we can't attract new teachers when it is not looked upon as a favorable profession. And then you tack pay on top of that. And why would you become a teacher? And it can't just be because the good of the future. There's got to be more to it. And I don't know how we get to that root cause. But I think, the support at home, the community support, pulling in all of those resources. And it's not just a 7 to 3 o'clock job or building, right? Our school buildings need to become more than that, I think, but with the support of the community. So I'd like to see someone who's interested in leveraging other resources.
I would too. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think to Amber's point and everyone's point, education has been a profession of pendulum swings. And we have swung in ways that have really impacted our teacher workforce, and our solutions are not, they're reactionary. And so if we can work towards a proactive stance in workforce solutions, in excellence in academics, that also leads into workforce leadership in the state and going to college. And the college going rate needs to be a conversation in the department as well. That rate is low, and we have expectations for our state, and we know that we need excellent people at all levels of completion and credentials. And so we can't be focusing in single buckets anymore. We really need to be comprehensive in how we address the workforce issues in the state, and they all center from education. So
I'll piggyback off of exactly what Corinne said is that working for 3 commissioners, I think, Lou, talking about, all these things are absolutely important, but it's impossible for one person to do. And so really being collaborative and an advocate for K-12 and building relationships with all of those stakeholder groups are so key, and bringing people to the table to have those conversations and to execute those plans collectively is powerful. And that's when it works. But the hardest part is bringing everybody to the table and getting it, in a direction and narrowing whatever that focus is, because there's lots of focus areas, right? And so helping to prioritize that with a really strong vision, a collaborative vision for what we want to see for Kentucky. And K-12 is pivotal with that piece. Absolutely. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'd like to just jump back off of what Dr. Ellis said, a vision. I'd like to see what the qualities in a commissioner. Obviously, education is, from early childhood all the way through adult learning in our state. And I want to hear from a variety of candidates who have a strong vision with some type of strategic plan, with a knowledge of Kentucky currently. I want to hear them not speak generally about education, but specific to the unique challenges that we as a Commonwealth are facing.
Very helpful. Thank you.
I'll just say real quick, as it relates to our board, I want to make sure that have someone that is attracting new people into the field of education while at the same time still having high standards for those professionals that are entering the classroom. So I know that we've seen other states attempt to bring people into the profession and we open the floodgates. And I think that we need to just be careful about who we let in teaching our kids. And so sort of a balancing act there. And then as another one, I would say, as the commissioner is the executive secretary of EPSB, I would just like for them to be involved in that process. I think that helps with bringing it back to the board and having that collaboration between us as a board as well as KBE as a board. So I think just that presence here as executive secretary.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if this is possible, and I was going to ask it as a question, but I'm not sure you'd be allowed to even answer it. So I guess I'll just try to phrase it as a statement. I'm not sure what the actual hiring process will look like for the commissioner, but I would love for it to model as much as the student experience as possible. So if we have the statewide, the portrait of a graduate, if there's any opportunity for them to do some kind of celebration of learning as how they meet those competencies. I think that would be really unique to see how they do that, since we're wanting our students to do that, to see how they see that in a light. And then I know we have some student advocacy groups across the state. There's a really unique school out in San Diego. It's Public School Design 39. I'm sure you're familiar with it. And they actually put kids on their hiring committee, and it's a really beautiful interview process. I won't go too far into it, but I think that would be extremely unique if we had students involved, if we had some kind of format for them to have a voice as well, since this impacts them.
Yeah. So I am allowed to answer questions. And I would be happy to. The process is public to the extent that it's required to be, but the interviews themselves are closed session. So when the candidates are in, and oftentimes, depending on what his or her situation is, they may not even be named publicly. Last time around, we had 3 finalists, and we had 4. One dropped out right before the interview series, and the 3 of them were named before their second round of interviews. So that's likely to be the case, but the interviews themselves are in closed session. We have a student on the board, and so we are in great shape in that regard. And the possibility that we would do some kind of a performance or a celebration of learning or a portrait of a learner inspired requirement in the interview process is really quite likely. If we choose to do something like that, that would be fine. Certainly, me, I'm going to want to know what they know about portraits of a learner and the, power that has for the future of assessment and for teaching and learning in the Commonwealth. So that'll be a big part of the way we approach that as well. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how that all plays out and what the experiences of the candidates are in that regard, but very helpful. And I also should mention in regard to kids that the Commissioner Student Advisory Council met last week, week before last, and they had the same questions and had the chance to weigh in. I think you would be surprised, maybe, about how wise they were in their responses and how their responses resonate really strongly with the kind of comments you all have made today, especially in regard to student and educator mental health. So that was really high on their priority list.
Well, I should not be surprised you guys are on the same mindset.
Have you thought about what that might look like in terms of a celebration of learning? Show us what you can do. Show us how you've led diversity and equity and inclusion kinds of efforts. So we get a lot of information on these folks. And my recollections are tainted a bit because they were all virtual last time until we got to the 3 finalists. So most of them happened. I remember Jason standing in his living room in Denver or in Colorado when he was doing his interview. So that's something to think about too. We could put them on the spot just like we do young people. Show us what you know.
Any others? Ideas?
Maybe somebody who is knowledgeable with the politics.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, the politicians are really trying to shape, you know, our education, and we need more of a voice, somebody who can, I guess, hobnob with them,
Yeah.
but yet, you know, get
Yeah.
the job done for, you know, education.
Yeah. And we have, Dr. Robinson and I have met with several legislators and their representatives. And so a high level of visibility is on their ask list as well.
Very good.
But I'll just be a little bit more blunt than
Go for it, Corinne.
you know who we are. I think also someone who will work within the systems and the scopes that have been defined. I'll just speak for me at this point, but the last thing that we need is someone to come in and blow a lot of things up. We have really good people doing really good work within their areas, right? So standards board, licensure here, you know, doing work with CPE and higher ed over there, like someone who's going to work very specifically with the existing folks and not come in and say, well, this is all education, right? We don't need someone to do that. We need someone to work with us in our existing roles.
Okay. Okay.
And maybe the same for the legislature.
Did I let them know or?
I will, it's okay.
Okay.
Any others? And I'm certain if we do come up with some more after
So-
this meeting, we can probably email.
That is my closing remark.
All right.
The visitor search website, if we could make sure that they get the copy of this link. But it is, if you were to Google KBE Commissioner Search, it should take you directly to this site, but we have the link for you and there is an open invitation for anyone to comment there. So you're also more than invited to email me, or you can have my cell number. Everybody else in Kentucky has it if you don't. So please don't hesitate to reach out or through Robin or Byron. We're happy to capture any other thoughts that you may have after you leave today, especially when you've had a chance to think on it. I really appreciate, can't believe I just said think on it. Sorry. I really, really appreciate your time this morning. Just the thoughtfulness. Congratulations. Welcome, Dr. Cousins. And I hope you have a great rest of the meeting, but we really appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really good, thoughtful remarks, and I was scribbling as fast
Oh,
as I
good,
could as
good.
well. So we will make sure that we pass this along. I think next on the agenda is a report from the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and Dr. Ellis, I'll turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. It's always nice to have input and conversation. I think that's the only way we're going to keep moving ahead and doing this hard work, right? It's not for the faint of heart. Just want to give you a few updates on some of the work that's going on. First of all, tomorrow we're actually having a healthcare workforce collaboratory. So you all may or may not know there's been a lot of need also in the medical field, specifically around nurses and just health staff, period, across the board. We are all in the fight of our lives for a highly qualified staff to do service-oriented work. That's really hard. And so CPE received funding to really pull this together and bring different healthcare employers together. And so they're actually having a collaboratory tomorrow to start having those conversations with our healthcare employees, our institutions, and our students, and what's barriers and challenges, and yet what are our successes and how do we move forward. So very similar conversations, and that's going to take place tomorrow. Last week, or actually I guess a week ago, Friday, we wrapped up our Summer Bridge grant season, I guess you would say. Thanks to KDE and the ESSER funding, we were able to acquire, we were able to have a third round of Summer Bridge programs. We granted, I think, 23 institutions benefited from that. Some had more than one Summer Bridge program. And so what we did is bring them together at U of L's Shelbyville campus, or Shelby Road, whatever, Shelbyhurst campus, sorry, and brought those folks together to share promising practices. I think the highlight, which is no shock, is we had a student panel that shared the impact of Summer Bridge, how it made them feel like they belonged, that they were worthy, that they could do school, that they could do college. I will tell you, just because of this group coming together, U of L actually had a specific summer bridge for aspiring educators. And so if you have not talked to Dr. Penny Howell or their near peers did a breakout session. They submitted a proposal to share what they did. I would call that the secret sauce. And so the incoming students now want to be near peers. And so it's like this great competition. But ultimately, they feel like they're a part and they see themselves as future teachers. And it's really encouraging what that transition can do. And that's why I've found myself living in this space of that transition between high school or even just life into post-secondary, and that handoff's got to be intentional. And the students didn't talk about their programming, they talked about relationships and that they found somebody they knew and an adult they trusted. And so it was really powerful. So we hope to see that continue in some form. We also worked a lot on early post-secondary opportunities, a lot around dual credit. And so we've had a couple of webinars that we try to push out for the working people. We know how busy everyone is. On October 3rd, it focused on improving advising, eliminating random acts of dual credit. This is a lot of concerns. We don't want to waste people's time or money or send the wrong message to families. So we're really trying to be more intentional. That's in collaboration with our K-12 folks, our higher ed partners, and Kia, of course, always working together to try and make it better. The next one is November 7th, which is talking to middle school students about opportunities early and often is really important for students to know that they are worthy, they have access, and there are opportunities for them to have exposure to post-secondary opportunities to pursue possible career interest. And so that's been really exciting. The toolkit is online. It's been highly accessed by lots of folks, and we are adding to it constantly. And then the last thing, just to wrap up, because I do know we have a ton, there's a lot of stuff on here. We are really excited to welcome 2 new presidents. There have been a couple presidential searches. Of course, the U of L president just got inaugurated last week or the week before last. But NKU just voted to appoint recently Katie Short Thompson. And so she took office October 2nd. So she officially started her role. And then you all probably also saw KCTCS, the system president position was filled by Dr. Ryan Quarles, who you will know is our Commissioner of Agriculture. So he will not start that role until January. So things are rolling, it's busy, and we are constantly working with others to try to really create that seamless transition in partnership. And so again, it's always great to talk to you guys, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the report of the Associate Commissioner, Byron Darnell. Yeah. Hey, Byron. Good morning.
You're gonna stay up here with me? Give me
Sure.
some-
Come on.
Good morning, everyone. First off, thank you, Ms. Chesser, Ms. Trueblood, Ms. Listerman, and OLS team for all the preparation today. Mostly thank you for your presence and being here. And want to welcome Dr. James Cousins formally, and also to just say that we have a full complement, although everyone is not here today, but we finally have a full complement as a board, and that has taken quite some time to get to. So that is very exciting. Just a few areas to update you and show you just a few peeks at some data. Also want to just welcome, we have 2 new OELE staff members. We have Tessa Harris that is joining us as a data controller that will fill Scott Tremolis's prior position. And she brings a lot of knowledge from her internal work already at KDE, and thrilled to have her expertise. And then Mr. John Fields also will join us in replacement for Crystal Hord's position. Losing Crystal was quite a institutional parameter, so that's tough, but Mr. Fields brings tremendous expertise, and just very thrilled to be able to have that plug and play opportunity. So it's taken a bit, but at least we have these 2 positions that we can now move forward with and feel very positive about as far as the individuals. I want to show you, I asked Megan, let me see if I can get this to work correctly. I'm gonna try and share the screen up here just to show you few areas perhaps of interest. Let's see if this is going to work for me here. No, that's a little bit hard to see. So also, I also want to, Todd Davis and I are both colorblind, so I have no idea what color this is up here. Okay, thank you for that. I would not have said green, so I appreciate the assistance. Yeah, I'm not one of one anymore. So Todd also suffers from the inability to see particular colors. But I also always want to say, I think Vice Chair Weedman said it a second ago that it's not just one person, and that certainly is not the case for me. And it would take me a long time to be able to go through and highlight the OELE staff and all the wonderful things they do. But I always want to make sure that I give them credit, because it certainly isn't me, and I'm very fortunate to have individuals that are very competent and very ready to assist our educators and schools. So this just gives you just a little bit of a graph of the past 24 months in terms of the KEX system. Talked about this quite a bit. We are now over a year in using the new platform. And just the automation of this has certainly allowed for a much greater expediency. And this just gives you a graph of all of the completed certificates in the past 24 months. I think the interesting thing to note is as we get further to my right here, you can see that while there was still some peaks in June and August, that it's evening out more so than it was the year prior. And that has been the goal, is to try to create a little more evening out of the work. And so the system is performing at a level that is helping to achieve this. And this, I think, is a great celebration, because that means the turnaround is prompt. In most cases, the certification experts are day of. And so this is important in terms of being able to get people situated and to work through. Naturally, there are always circumstances that have to go through different reviews or insufficiencies, but by and large, as long as things are in line, it really has expedited this turnaround. And so just want to report that the work that has happened has been a heavy lift by a lot of people, but we are seeing the payoff. There are still the third phase, which involves some of the other capacities that you all are using with the board materials. So as you've noticed in the last year, you've kind of seen the transference of that occurring. So a lot of pieces are falling in line, but slowly but surely, I think we're getting there in terms of being able to be fully on the new system. So I'm excited to be able to share just that information. And then I also just wanted to return. I know this has been sort of an ongoing conversation, an area of reporting back to you, but working on the educator workforce dashboard. Again, we are still in a production phase of this, but the process for it has really come a long way. And I just want this isn't a figment of imagination. So it is really coming to fruition. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through and detailing because it's just not the time or place for that. But I just want you to see that the work is being completed. And sorry, let me switch back here. And so when you're looking through the various components of data that are pulled together in this dashboard, this is going to look at 1 year at a time, which for this particular facing chart here would be the 21-22 data. But then an important feature that we've really been working on is to be able to give a 5-year snapshot of that data as well. So there are just hopefully components that will pull together several data sources in order to provide information. And then if you look up at the top corner as well, it also has the functionality of being able to drill down to a county or independent school district level as well. So it'll get granular there in terms of being able to look at this information. So really, we're just in the final phases of approval for this, but just want to return to it since it has been something that we've all been very interested in terms of the state of our education pipeline and just trying to be better at being able to display and share data as a whole. So it is coming along, thankfully. And let me go back here and get. See, there we go. All right, success. So just a few things that I wanted to be able to show you and give you an update on. Also want to just highlight that we have accreditation visits, some first with UK and Thomas More that are going through AQUEP. So this is a new experience for some of our institutions as another provider. And then plus we also have U of L and Murray State that are going through accreditation in CAPE. So we have a lot going in terms of the accreditation cycles during this time. I want to highlight the Ed Rising, as was brought up by Mr. Fryer, continue to love the momentum that we just see in our state. Murray State will have their regional event on November 5th, so that'll occur between now and our next meeting. And then we are finalizing, it's always a process to get contracts in place, but the March statewide competition, we are working to finalize the place as the Kentucky Exposition Center. So what this means is the interest in growth has brought us to a stage that we need a bigger facility. And so the celebration of this, I think, cannot be said enough. And we're moving to a much larger. Bellarmine has been such a wonderful place for us. But unfortunately, they told me they were not going to be able to construct another building just for us, which I respect that. But we are working to finalize that contract, and fingers crossed, we're almost able to, I think, ink that opportunity as well. That will happen in March. Also, want to say that very glad to hear of opportunities for working session possibilities. Of course, your all's time is just beyond valuable, and being here today is not easy, and just being in opportunities where we can have discussions, which is pretty limited during the times of our meetings. So just want to extend gratefulness for the potential dates that are floating around for conversations around some of the working items, goals, and priorities for EPSB. One of the things that we just talked about a little bit as an example in the waiver committee is just we've had recent statutes and regulations and just sort of working through some of the changes that have occurred, especially coming post-COVID. And it's just would be an opportunity to have conversations around areas that the board as a whole can perhaps find a more permanent resolution to, as opposed to some of the processes that we've had to work through at this time. So my gratitude for your time and attention, and just grateful for each and every one of you. And I hope if you had your recent fall break that it was enjoyable. And if you are perhaps getting a fall break, then you will be able to look at the rest of us and smile and say, now it's my turn. So I thank you all very much. And Chair Mitch, also Interim Commissioner Kinney, thank you for being here today. Dr. Young, thank you as well. Dr. Brewer, appreciate your all's presence at our meeting. And Chair Mitchell, I think that's all I have this morning.
Dr. Darnell, just a quick note. I think you mentioned Murray's having a regional coming up.
Correct.
NKU also has one in November as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I need to get the date on that.
Yes.
Outstanding. Thanks for interjecting.
Thank you very much for, oh, I'm sorry, there's another
I
question.
just have a question. When do we get access to the data?
I have to.
It's very exciting.
I
should
know.
start with that. It's very exciting.
I have to, Interim Commissioner Kinney and I have to work through that as a process, but we are, and we're looking at the best possibility.
It will be a very useful tool for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
It will be a very useful tool. I know that Byron and his team have been working really hard to get it to you. Of course, we want it to be in the best shape possible. so that people don't look at it and realize unintended consequences of it. So I know they've been working very, very hard. It is an issue that once we get to that place, it'll help us tell the story better. It's one thing to say we have a teacher shortage, or it's one thing to say we can't find the quality teachers. We need the data to back it up to say how many. When you say we have a teacher shortage, how short are we? And in which areas are we short? And we have some of that information now, but I think this new dashboard will really kind of help us emphasize and make it very crystal clear to everyone what kind of condition we're in. Thank you, Byron, very much.
Thank you all.
First, let me thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I have never been to an EPSB meeting, so this is my first time. I have listened closely to sort of your thoughts and your words surrounding the profession, and most importantly, how it impacts students. And so I look forward to continuing to hear from you. If you have ideas that you would like for me to bring to you, topics that you'd like for me to cover when I come and present in the KDE update, I'm happy to do that. You can bring those through Chair Mitchell or through Byron or Cassie. As I listened to you, I had some things that I was already jotting down that I might bring back for our next report. By the time that I come back to you, of course, we'll be on the heels of the biennial budget. And so that's always a really exciting time for everyone. I guess we could call it exciting. But I'm happy to report on anything out, just if you have curiosity about something that's going on in the department. So thank you very much for what you do here. You are upholding the integrity of the profession through your service to the Commonwealth. And so we appreciate that very, very much.
And thank you all for joining us today. I know that it means a lot for you all to be here and for us to have the conversation. And before you leave, because it's up to my updates, and I just want to make sure that you all know my number one priority, which I say I feel like at every meeting, is that we should fully fund KTIP in this next biennium. And so I just throwing that out there so that you all hear that as well before you leave us.
It made the cut.
But I know that is something that we see as a need from the EPSB board on a regular occasion. So we need that mentoring to happen, and we need that to be fully funded. There is great work. I don't want to ever say that there is wonderful work happening mentoring new teachers across the state, but I'm really concerned about those that aren't in college towns and those that are in our rural populations that are not receiving that same mentorship and guidance for that first year. So I just wanted to make sure I would hate myself if I hadn't said it before you all left.
The data, like what you're talking about, speaks to that, because when you look at the new teachers under 3 years, it's 3 times higher than what it was 5 years ago. I mean, and we're not supporting them in the way that they need.
Teacher induction programs are very, very important, and also principal induction programs.
Yes.
The best gift that I won't say the best, but one of the greatest gifts that we can give to our teachers is a great principal.
Yeah.
So we need great teachers and we need great principals to really embrace and support each other. So both of those as Lou said, made the cut. We'll be advocating for both of those in the General Assembly.
And great superintendents.
And
too.
great superintendents too, all the way up.
We did
All the way up.
We did choose to bundle the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness requests in such a way as to prioritize the workforce in our additional budget request process. So the board had very intentional conversations around making sure that that was a prominent feature in our budget conversations this time around.
Chair.
Appreciate that.
I was actually shocked that you didn't say one of the qualities you were looking for. I was waiting for K-tip to come out. Like, do they have a K-tip tattoo?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Since you mentioned the budget and the session is coming up, legislative priorities, obviously for KDE and for where EPSB fits into that. I would hope that the December brief that we get includes comprehensive information about that. So
Yeah,
that
we're
we
happy
have
to do that.
information. Thank you.
Oh, and also if we're adding to things, the options, the 9, 10, the options to look those over a little bit more carefully as for teacher preparation. Like the options, particularly that do not give a class on class management, those kind of classes that you would normally get through college. That's what I have heard would be very helpful too.
And just for reference, what Ms. Berry is discussing there is the 9 options that are in KRS 161048. And so that is something that hopefully this board will be able to, with your work session, talk a little bit more as you are setting your certification priorities as well. As we know, those do come to us from the legislature, but the board has had a lot of conversations about those as well.
What she said.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that's a good transition to say that to help set those goals and priorities for EPSB, that we do want to hold that work session. I know that there's email floating around that has certain dates on there. So if you'll please respond to that so that we can get that on the calendar. I think that's just an easier time for us to have discussion set aside apart from our actual work meeting and our work session. So I hope that we can, I know asking for another date for you to come can be difficult, but I think it's really important work that we do. So just try to respond to that email soon. And then those priorities and things that we discussed will be brought back before the full board in our December meeting for EPSB to be voted on as our priorities there. All right, we will now move to consent items. Items A through F are listed on the agenda as consent items, and I will give the members a moment to review the list. Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Having received no requests to remove items from the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve consent items A through F?
Make a motion to approve consent items A through F.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. And do I have a second?
Sarah Weedman, second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. The motion before the board is to approve consent items A through F. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Today we have 3 information items. The items are presented to the board for review and discussion only. And we will begin with item A from Dr. Diebel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
After all of your commissioner discussion, I'm really excited to be on the hot seat. Thank you all for allowing us time to go over this information item for you in this meeting. We will provide additional information for our recommendations for you as we had our meeting last week and couldn't get it to you right away. But we appreciate the decision that the EPSB will make in December regarding this work. Will have a great impact on ed prep programs across the state. I have with me today Dr. Wynn Wheeler, an assistant professor of literacy education at Bellarmine University. She teaches in the initial certification and MAED literacy programs. Dr. Wheeler was a North Carolina teaching fellow and completed undergraduate and graduate degrees at Elon University. In 2016, she completed her doctorate in the University of Louisville in curriculum and instruction with a content focus in literacy. Her scholarship is focused on writing development, instructional coaching, professional learning, and creating inclusive, equitable classroom environments. She worked in a K-12 setting for 20 years, where she spent time as an elementary classroom teacher and instructional coach. She earned national board certification as a middle childhood generalist. Recently, she became an agency trainer for cognitive coaching, and in 2023 was recognized by the Association of Independent Liberal Arts Colleges of Teacher Education with the Diversity and Inclusion Change Agent Award. She serves as co-director of the Louisville Writing Project and co-editor of the Kentucky English Bulletin Journal, which is the journal of the Kentucky Council of Teachers of English. To offer some background for the EPSB, through legislative action, you all have been tasked with maintaining a list of approved teacher preparation tests that are determined by the board to be an effective evaluation of reading instruction, knowledge, and skills by January 1st, 2024 in KRS 164.306. The ELC, so we formed the early literacy cohort through the Office of Education Licensure Effectiveness, And we have met in July, August, and September to discuss this legislative requirement and the additional early literacy assessment measures within the state of Kentucky. The ELC evaluated all praxis reading assessment measures for early childhood and elementary education currently available. In addition, the state approach to creating an exam like Tennessee has done was considered. However, the time needed to create, pilot, and determine validity and reliability did not make this a feasible option at this time. The addition of PPAT as a potential assessment measure was also considered. However, as this is still being piloted across the state, has not been validated as a measure of early literacy knowledge and skills. It is not considered one of our recommendations for this meeting. The consensus of the ELC was that literacy specialist knowledge was inappropriate for a first-year teacher, so all exams that aligned to that level of understanding and knowledge were eliminated from consideration. The ELC discussed scoring and implementation of different assessment measures, as well as additional considerations for no cut scores, standard cut scores, -1 SEM cut scores, and the development of a reading assessment for the context of Kentucky. It was the consensus of the cohort that until data could be gathered on the impact of Praxis 5205, which Dr. Wheeler will talk about more, the Kentucky-specific assessment is unneeded. However, in a year, if data demonstrates that the new assessment has created barriers to the profession and or to success of different candidates, then we will revisit that discussion or that point. While evaluating assessment measures for early childhood education and meeting with Praxis, we determined that there are no current evaluation or assessment measures available for birth to kindergarten. Most of the other measures went up to third grade, which doesn't align to our certification licensing area. There has been a suggestion that, sorry, now I lost my place in my talk here. Oh, that's okay. Through our discussion, we found that we were able, Dr. Katrina Sloan, Alice Lloyd College. She
Went to the bathroom.
she went to the bathroom, now she's back. She is also on our committee, so she's here to help answer questions. So concerns of cost and barriers to the profession were discussed. Through our discussions, we found that we'll be able to offer funding for praxis exams. This is all praxis exams, not just the literacy one, but through the Kentucky Academy for Equity in Teaching praxis reimbursement program, which is offered through CKEC. There has been suggestions that the board could ask the legislature for funding of these exams. However, we leave that to the discretion of the board and have not formed an opinion in our group. Also, the ELC will collect data from the various exams that you offer, including disaggregation of data to evaluate equity barriers and barriers to the profession. The ELC will continue to meet for the next several years. This group will meet and we will offer data reports. We can offer further recommendations to the board as we see fit. And before I let Dr. Wheeler make her recommendations, Dr. Katrina Sloan is, I'm going to tell them about you anyway. I'm going to brag on her. She's saying we don't have to, but she's the Education Division Chair at Alice Lloyd College. She works diligently with all education majors through teaching and advising. Additionally, she works closely with school districts, community members and other stakeholders to ensure that pre-service teachers are prepared to become successful classroom teachers. She brings a multifaceted perspective due to her work as a K-8 teacher for 27 years in Knott County and her work as a district science coach. She has served as a field instructional specialist for Kentucky Department of Ed and is currently the STEM lead for the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative. So now we're going to brag about her. So I read that really quick. I apologize. But the most important information, I'm going to have Dr. Wheeler make her recommendations from our vast months of research to the board.
Good morning. Thank you for this time. The overall recommendation of the ELC for elementary education is to add Praxis Test 5205, which is teaching reading elementary, to the already established state requirements core academic skills for educators 5752, elementary education multiple subjects 5001, principles of learning and teaching grades K through 6 5622. The overall recommendation is that students be given a year with no cut scores to do no harm to those with different curricula within their literacy coursework, and to move to a multi-state standard setting studies cut score for the 25-26 school year, adopting the -1 SEM as has been done with the board with all previous praxis exams. The ELC also recommends viewing this as a pilot for the next 2 years with a review of assessment data and program employment impact after each year of data. Additionally, the ELC could not find a suitable assessment measure for early childhood that addresses the literacy legislation and is appropriate for the grade span of Kentucky's certification birth through K. Therefore, the ELC would recommend that the board allow for the development of an appropriate assessment. Additionally, the ELC would like to recommend that the EPSB accept the current testing requirements for the remainder of the 23-24 school year, setting August 24 as the start date for the required testing of the new literacy assessment.
And now we will open it up for questions.
What is the cost of this? Do we have a price tag on this?
This assessment, I don't have a price for it. We were able just to meet with ETS last Thursday to tell him that this is, and obviously we have to wait for board recommendation, but I can get that for you and we can have that sent out.
Okay.
Remind me of the process at this point. So this is a first reading,
Yeah, this is just information item.
and then the next meeting, there's a vote, or 2 meetings from now, there's a vote.
I believe it's December. that there's a
December,
vote.
yeah. The legislation states that you have to have a list by January 1st, 2024. So it's kind of why we were in a crunch to get this to you right now so that you had time to consider.
So this is an additional test that our elementary candidates will take. And I'm assuming if they're like IECE and elementary, then those candidates will take this as well because of the elementary part. Okay. Yeah. So no other test will be eliminated, like the content, like elementary social studies, those tests will stay.
Yeah, we discussed that in our group because originally the intention of the legislation was that we could switch out ELA for reading, but the praxis actually doesn't allow that. So in order for us to package them together, we would have to change all of the assessments. And we thought that might be a lot for EPPs to undertake.
Thank you.
And but we can at some point look at if we want to eventually pull the ELA test, but we didn't think it would be, I guess we want to make sure we're still collecting data for ELA.
Right.
And then allow for no scores for the reading. Next year, we could make recommendations on removing ELA when we have scores that we're going to expect for reading.
Okay. Thank you.
And so the recommendation is for this first year for students to start taking the exam as of January 1.
No, we're asking that the board set the start date of this for August
For August
of
1.
2024.
And that whole year is a hold harmless year.
Yes,
Will not hold anyone's certifications up as a function of a new test.
correct. But we will gather assessment scores. So we'll be able to tell you, we will know what the -1 SEM would be. And so we can let you know what barriers it looked like it presented. And we can disaggregate that data by any measure that you would want. So if we wanted to look at, diversity numbers, if we wanted to look at gender, if we wanted to look at anything like that, we could, so that we could then make a decision about the cut score going into the next year. And at that point, we could also decide to take out the ELA test. We could switch all of the praxis exams. We have a lot of options, but
Is the hold harmless year, is that standard? When you're integrating a new test, that seems.
yeah, most, I think
But
every
there is no
other-
cut score during that period. So everyone who takes the exam is just.
Correct,
Push
because they've already passed their, or taken their literacy courses, and the courses weren't aligned necessarily to this legislation. So we don't want to harm the field of education by holding them to a testing requirement on information that they weren't given in their curriculum.
But they're still getting an ELA score on the other test, on the old test.
Correct.
That holds them.
And so the ultimate recommendation is that that ELA test would be removed, or that we would recommend over time that that ELA test be removed, so that there is still a score for ELA in the coming year, but we are able to collect data to understand where
So they're
students are.
they're taking 2 exams.
Yeah, they're taking 2 that would pertain to English language.
And do they,
They're taking many more. than that.
Yes.
how will that be communicated to the teacher educators, potential teacher educators?
Well, when the board makes the vote in December, usually there's a communication that goes out to all chairs at education programs, and then we will update it on our website and communicate with.
Is there, no, I'm just thinking mechanically, how do, teacher ed programs, how do they communicate? Hey, one of these tests will count, the other one won't. And then one that won't, how do you know that you're getting a valid score? That they're not just kind of going through and marking things?
Well, my experience with teacher education candidates is that they don't throw tests. I guess is what I think, is that they will put forth their best effort in that test. I've never seen education students not do that. So
You've never seen education students not put forward their best effort?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
my experience with education students.
I would also assume that if they didn't pass and then when the no harm year is up, they would have to retake it, correct?
They do not, because what our recommendation is, and you as the board make the decision, but our recommendation is that,
They're certified.
yeah, we basically allow them, that we use their ELA score. So essentially, if the legislation hadn't been passed, this wouldn't be necessarily a conversation. So.
That was what I was going to point to, because as Dr. Diebel noted, there is this statute in place, KRS 164306, and this is a little different than how things have been handled in the past, because certification assessments are required by statute, but the specificity has not quite occurred to that level as this legislation did with the early literacy piece to it, that has required this timeline of a new test, and not quite the amount of time that you would want for your preparation programs to be able to then accommodate that list. Because if you're putting a list out in January, I will defer to our prep programs at the table, but you would want more than 6 months to have your students ready to take those specific tests. And unfortunately, that timeline did not occur in the statute at this point. Now, we do have another session coming up, and we will all see what happens with that come April. So there is potential that changes could happen in that time period. However, the board, to comply with statute, will have to have a list of tests set by that January deadline, and then individuals in those programs will, if the statute remains as is, have to take those assessments in the next school year. However, we have heard from the legislature and one of the sponsors of this as well, that the intent was never to create an additional barrier that's going to exacerbate a shortage.
And I just want to emphasize, we have 27 members of the early literacy cohort. So there are 27 experts across the state that all have literacy, extensive backgrounds in literacy. So, and they took copious notes on several assessments. So we looked at we had several meetings with ETS to determine, and Vice Chairman, we talked about performance-based assessments. Anything that we can do that we can support access to the field while still holding rigorous standards is something that we considered. And based on the timeline, so I think our group would say we're not saying that 5205 is the best test in the world. I think what we're saying is, of the options available to us, it fits legislatively what we are being asked to do, and giving a year of no harm allows for to prevent barriers to entering the field. As we all know, praxis can be a barrier to people entering the field. So This was, again, our best recommendation. I work very closely with the Office of Teaching and Learning and have met with legislators and to discuss sort of this work as well. And so I have already let them know that we could not find an early childhood literacy assessment that will fit. So, the legislation says you all have to pick one. There isn't one. And so, our recommendation to you is to let the legislature know that that there's not an available test. I will say Praxis last week offered an opportunity for 2 Kentucky early childhood experts to join them in the writing of their next Praxis assessment. And so I have reached out to chairs and the early literacy cohort and am collecting names of people that could potentially serve on that national committee. So we'll have 2 people from Kentucky helping to write that assessment, which I think is really important.
Do we know how many other states use this test?
This has been the go-to for a majority of the other states. There is a 7,000 series that we looked at. No states currently use that, but that one is kind of what our 5,000 series is, except the reading is focused on evidence-based reading practices as opposed to the ELA test that we currently have. So it's packaged slightly different, but no states are using that yet. And so I think we'd have to do more investigation. The other thing is Praxis did provide us with some practice numbers. And so all of our early literacy cohort members will take the test and we'll be able to see what that looks like, as well as so the questions as well as constructed responses.
Are they able to provide a practice test to our legislation as well?
Practice tests for you all or for legislators?
For legislators.
I suppose they could. I'd have to ask them.
I would love to have that option on the table for them to take it as well and see their scores. I think that would be really unique. And thank you all for your hard work. My frustration is not with you all at all. It is with other people. It's just really hard. While the intent may not have been to add another barrier, it's really just hard to not feel like it is, especially thinking about like financials. If a young college student has to pay for this, it just on top of all the other things, and knowing kind of what you said about their work ethic, if they don't pass it right away, paying again to retake it. So again, I'm frustrated, not with you all. I know you guys have done the best with the cards that we've been handled, but I don't want to not voice my frustration with this process and just feeling like we're just testing the heck out of adults and children in general.
And Vice Chair Weidman, and for the board as a whole, I think this is something that we can, if we can get this work session underway, we can add that to the agenda under our Ed Prep division of work. Even if we're not able to do that, this is still something that when you all revisit these recommendations to take action in December, you can also at that time voice that you would like to pursue an extension of this timeline, or even potential revisions to the statute. Now, obviously, we are at the mercy of the legislature. That is they are the ones who set the statutes and put those in place, but we absolutely have the ability to provide them with recommendations on that and reasoning of why you would like to make those changes. So we can work that in either in a work session or in December, and then we will work with Brian Perry, put him on the spot to get that over across the river.
Any other questions?
Will we get that written report?
Yes, I can send that to Cassie, and then it'll have our recommendations in it. And just so you know, the Praxis reimbursement will cover more than one. Like if they have to retake it, it will cover that as well.
Okay, and I'm not gonna get the lettering right because we looked at so many things, but our like performance-based Praxis, yes, that. Would this be covered under it, or would they still have to, like, I know some of the ones you still have to take like outside of this. Would this fall into that category if someone chose to take that route, or would they had to do that and this assessment as well?
For elementary specifically, right now, the PPAT, if they took that, they could I think they would still have to take the literacy assessment because the
Okay.
PPAT, while they can choose an area of focus, it's
Mhm.
not going to count towards literacy legislation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? All right.
And feel free to email if you want me to pose any questions or if you want any specific data. I have notes from our entire group and all of the things. So we're happy to share anything.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. And next up is information item B by Cassie Trueblood.
As much as I need to get some steps in, if it's okay with
It is
you, I will
fine.
stay here.
You may stay there.
Thank you. So information item B, this is on page 59 of your agenda book. And this actually comes from discussions that were raised during the board comments of the last meeting. I believe Dr. Murphy, you started that conversation about looking at the board's meeting schedule. Right now, the meeting schedule that you have in place is that the board meets the second Monday of even numbered months, with the exception of June and August, when you are meeting on the third Monday of the month. You have the ability, you are the ones who set that schedule. You can revise that schedule. Specifically, what was discussed in the last meeting was that special called meeting that you had in July, wanting to make that permanent, to just simply use that meeting to address the pending certification issues for the next school year. So we absolutely can do that, of sticking to your current schedule, but adding a meeting in July to focus on those. Or you can make additional changes to the meeting schedule. This is just for information today, so it's for discussion, to bring this up to the board, and then we will bring something back to you in December based upon your discussions today for action. One other thing I will note for you is that June meeting tends to be very difficult. Under the current schedule, it was moved from the second Monday to the third Monday due to the annual NASDAQ conference occurring. However, the third Monday is now also in the rotation with the Juneteenth holiday. We also see a lot of people out on vacations as you get later into June. So you may want to look at that as well. I will open it up to any recommendations, discussions, or questions.
Do you think moving to the odd months? Well, I just know that with April, October, August, like this is the first Monday of April and October is most schools fall and spring breaks. So the second Monday is our first day back. So that'll be the case in April as well. And then August this year just happened to coincide with a lot of us, the first Monday after the start of school, which is also difficult. So
in the past, the board has had a different meeting schedule. This current schedule, I believe, was developed in 16 or 17 to align with the KBE meetings, because for a brief period of time, KBE also had the ability to review the regulations before EPSB. The meeting schedule before that did have the board meeting in, we'll start from now and go forward. It was August, September, and October, and then they would meet in January, January, March, and May. I will say the May meeting was always very, very difficult to occur. And the back-to-back meetings in the fall were not ideal. It's very difficult to get things back from you for the legal process. And it just tends to have you needing to meet. But we can explore however you would like to work with that. One thing you really need to keep in mind as well with your meeting schedule is making sure that people are able to go through that character and fitness process. So you have your mid-year graduates, so that December graduates, those May, June. So you do like to have a meeting to accommodate them if there are any pending character and fitness issues.
So maybe even in April and October, then doing the third Monday of the month instead of the second.
And we can look at moving those as well too, based on school calendars.
I just think August is just difficult. And I don't think it's fair to students, either in higher ed or in K-12, for us to be out that early. So I would like just to see the the August meeting moved.
Yeah, I think that is July's meeting, I think was important. And I think that I personally feel like we should still have the July meeting to let all of the certifications to come through, waivers to come through, the CAs, all those, everything to come through before the beginning of the school year. I do agree, August is so difficult for classroom teachers, for university personnel, because I think it started back on the first day of school for our university folks. So I don't know. Those are really sort of my personal two, that if we could work on what does that then mean? I don't
I
know.
agree with Eli though on the April and October. It is consistently falling for me, at least on the day back from break.
So possibly looking into maybe the third Monday of those months.
Would August, like the first Monday, work?
I feel
I mean, I know that's before we start. I don't know about
you mean in place of the July meeting, or
in place of the August.
I don't know if there's enough turnaround from the July meeting to the August meeting if we did it.
And so I think
that
if you moved to the 1st of August, then you would potentially not need a July special called meeting. But then you also have a longer break between and so if you're moving October to later, you are going to have an even longer break between the 1st of August, the October meeting. And so that is additional character and fitness and waivers that you have pending, because as you have seen today, we have quite a few waivers as well as character and fitness that do build up during that time. It sounds like maybe even you're looking at liking the potential of in the fall going to a July, September, November.
That'd be great.
How does that work with because you mentioned the mid-year thing, if we didn't do a December meeting, how does that impact?
And that's what we would need to look at and explore as well, because then you do have that break from November to the February meeting where you're not getting those. Now, right now, your December meeting is that second Monday and then the second Monday in February. So depending on when those graduations are happening, that can be, and again, we do hope that everyone is able to just graduate, apply directly to certification and not have to be held up at all, but we do have to account for those potential need for waivers and character and fitness as well. So there are going to be pros and cons to any meeting schedule here, but we can explore some things and do some polls with you. It sounds like right now some of the options that I'm hearing are looking at, if you kept your current meeting months, looking at changing the October and April meetings to later in the month, making that July permanent, and then potentially moving to some other months. So we've got a lot of options here.
I want to put on I know I'm the one who brought it up to begin with, so sorry, not sorry. I brought it up because I want to make sure that we're meeting at times that meet the needs of our districts and our licensure and getting our workforce into space or out of space, depending upon what needs to happen, right? And so whatever variables we use, I hope that we can stay in that realm of considering that we're doing this as a service to the districts and the workforce. So.
And I think from a board perspective, there's always going to be work to do. So I would rather, go back to what Corinne said and even meet more frequently to be able to meet the needs of the district. And maybe those meetings wouldn't be quite so long. right? So I just think that don't feel like that we have, when you're proposing something, that we're just so structured that we can't meet more, because I would rather meet more to support the districts.
And in that same vein, I know the preferred is in person and clearly it works really well when we're in person, but maybe there's a second tier of meeting potential that would meet the needs of the district. That would be a virtual option that would allow people to shorter and more accessible.
And we can
limited
absolutely
scope.
explore that as well, of looking at those special called meetings in July and potentially January, where you are just looking at your character and fitness, your waivers, those things that need that immediate action and happening in a virtual setting. And then keeping your other meetings with the full agenda, which would hopefully cut down on your character and fitness and waivers that you're seeing in those as well.
Thank you.
That's a good option.
Any other questions, concerns? All right. Moving on to information item, not action item, information item C by Ms. Trueblood as well.
And hopefully this one I've provided you with more to go on and less problems to just create. But information item C is a proposed amendment to 16 KAR 4020, which sets the certification requirements for teachers of exceptional children. The board did recently update this regulation as well as part of your ongoing regulation review cycle. However, there is some language in section 2 that is problematic in regards to IDEA and their limitations on waivers. This process, and the process is remaining the same. It's been referred to as a waiver process, but is more of a approval, a program teacher placement approval, where the individual that is going through this process already has a special education certificate. And so they are not asking to have their certification requirements waived for issuance. You're not issuing them another certificate. It is simply allowing in limited circumstances for additional special education students to be added to their roster. It does go through the Office of Special Education. Those do have to be approved. There are ARC meetings and IEP requirements that go into place before this comes to the Office of Special Education for review and then approval by the EPSB staff. So here, again, it's leaving that process in place, but removing the name waiver. And the amendment to that is also included in your materials there, and that starts on page 61. And this is information item today.
I have a question. Based on discussion we had in a meeting previously, in your existing policy, it says IDEA prohibits special education teachers from having certification or licensure requirements waived on an emergency, temporary, or provisional basis.
So there is additional language this is a portion of the IDEA. There is a separate section within that states that alternative certifications can be approved. They have to meet additional requirements. Those additional requirements in there is it has to be limited to the 3 years. So that's why when you saw those regulations around option 6 and option 7 previously, that though those for every other program, those can now be issued 5 times. IDEA limits those because those are provisional certificates to 3 years. They have to have a mentor assigned and professional development in place and proceeding towards the full certification. There are some questions that arise when we come in. I believe this is more to your point, Captain Rudzinski, is around the emergency certificate piece. And we are working on that with the Office of Special Education to bring back to this board a proposal, hopefully in December, but that would address some of those issues for the next school year and find a more permanent solution to have in place there.
Yeah, my concern is I don't want to, as a member of the waiver committee, I don't want to approve or recommend approval of a waiver. And I know you would give us good guidance on that. But as I read over that, and then we had something that, to my limited understanding of what this is saying, I'll clarify that. I didn't hear in that waiver education or any of those other things happening. It was simply an emergency
And so,
certification.
yes, and those are actually in the regulation for emergencies when they are being issued for special education. And so this is a separate regulation that we're talking now. The regulation specifically for emergency certificates does have additional requirements in place around the completion of professional development that has to occur with those pursuing emergency certification for special education.
Okay.
But again, there is a long conversation that is coming around those and updating those requirements and finding another pathway forward for Kentucky in that area.
I just want to make sure our KARs aren't conflicting with each other.
Any other questions? All right. Well, I know this is what you all have been waiting for to hear is our waiver section. The board is now ready to review the waiver request. KRS 1610281N provides that the board has the authority to waive its administrative regulations when a request is submitted by an applicant for certification, a post-secondary institution, or a superintendent of local school district. When requesting a waiver, the requesting party must submit to the board a written request along with appropriate justification for the waiver. EPSB staff reviewed the waivers with the EPSB's waiver committee during an open meeting immediately prior to this meeting, and the waiver committee formulated recommendations. Brandon Harrod and Sharon Salzman will present, the waiver request to the full board and waiver committee, with Corinne Murphy being present there to give the final action recommendation. Starting with waiver A, presented by Sharon Salzman.
Good morning. So this waiver is on behalf of Office of Career and Technical Education, and it's the recency requirement, and this is for Raymond Mullins. They only had one applicant apply for automotive technology. He currently is not a mechanic, but he has works regularly on vehicles for his friends and family. He also maintained motorized equipment at a local high school during the last 5 years. He has the required 4 years of work experience and is only missing the recency part.
And yes, Dr. Murphy.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Office of Career and Technical Education. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I make the motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Sarah Weedman, second.
And the motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2020, request to waive Office of Career and Technical Education recency requirement for Raymond Mullins. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next, we have waiver B.
This is to waive emergency certificate requirements for Bourbon County. They have been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for special education. The candidate is currently in a special education placement but needs the emergency certificate to continue. The district states there are no applicants for multiple special education positions at the beginning of the school year. The candidate had previously served as a long-term substitute in the district, so the district is requesting the EPSB waive the required GPA.
And Dr. Murphy.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Bourbon County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Make a motion to approve waiver B.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Bourbon County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Moving to waiver C.
This one is similar to the last one. This is for Covington Independent Schools. They have been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for an LBD position. They have 2 special education teachers and 2 instructional assistant positions vacant. The candidate would like to pursue a career in special education, but the current GPA is too low.
Dr. Murphy?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Covington Independent Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. This time I'll need a motion.
Jackie Mayfield.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Covington Independent Schools. Is there any discussion?
Do we know what the GPA is of the candidate?
Yes,
Are free to disclose that?
2.27.
They'll all be above.
Any other discussion?
Just for context, the committee, when we receive this information, the staff are fantastic at giving us precedents as to what the committee has voted before, why, and then we consider the different circumstances. So that's the nature of the conversation.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver D.
This is similar. This is for Elizabethtown Independent. They have been unsuccessful in finding a qualified teacher for health and PE. The candidate is enrolled in 2 bi-term courses to increase the GPA to meet the requirements for admission to a Master's of Arts in Teaching program.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Elizabeth Independent Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Elizabethtown Independent Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is waiver E.
This was like the last one. This one's for Eminence Independent. They have been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for a secondary social studies position. They have posted the position in numerous places and still been unsuccessful in finding a qualified secondary social studies teacher.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Eminence Independent Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll need a motion.
Jackie Mayfield. Make the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Eminence Independent Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Waiver F.
We're just going to keep going with these emergency certificate waivers. This is for Fleming County. They have been unsuccessful in finding a qualified elementary teacher. The candidate has been conditionally accepted into an option 6 and while completing coursework to improve their GPA.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and submit supporting documentation submitted by the Fleming County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Sarah Weedman, motion to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Fleming County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next is waiver G.
This is emergency certificate waiver for Nelson County. They've been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for special education positions. The district is struggling to fill 2 special education positions, and this applicant is interested in pursuing the option 6 program for special education certification and has been conditionally admitted while they work to raise their GPA.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the Nelson County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make the motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second waiver G.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Nelson County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is waiver H.
Waive emergency certificate for Owen County Schools. They've been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for special education position. Position is currently being filled with a long-term sub who has no special education experience. This applicant is currently a high school teacher and has experience working with students, families, and is a true asset to the school and community per this district.
Waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the Owen County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Is there a second?
Second.
A lot, Ms. Snell. Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Owen County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Moving on to waiver I.
All right, this one's a little bit different. So we're going to waive the renewal requirements for provisional certificate for school counselor for Shauna Paul. She has submitted this waiver. She has been a school counselor. She's been employed for 17 years. She started her career as a classroom teacher, and she's been a counselor for the last 5 years. She completed her second master's, ranked 1 in school counseling, where she earned her 45 credit hours. She states her previous understanding was a provisional certificate was given at 33 and the standard certificate was given with the completion of 42. She currently learned where she was going through this counseling program that it was a 45 hours for the provisional, so she will need to complete additional hours.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second. Mayfield.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 3060, request to waive renewal requirements for provisional certificate for school counselor for Shauna Paul. Is there any discussion?
Just that this was similar to one we had at the last meeting. Just pointing out that precedence.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next up is waiver J.
Right, this is to waive equivalent certification requirements for out-of-state prepared educator Tammy Conrad. She completed her program out of state. Halfway through her degree, she moved to Kentucky. The university informed her that she could complete her degree and become certified in Kentucky. After moving, she was told differently by the university. She looked into transferring to Kentucky University, but it was not feasible. She has taken and passed all the Kentucky assessments required for elementary certification. She was not interested in teaching in Indiana. She did not take the Indiana assessments, nor did she obtain certification in Indiana.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4030, request to waive equivalent certification requirement for out-of-state prepared educator Tammy Conrad. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next up is waiver K.
Right, this is similar to the last waiver we just did. And this one's for Hannah Porter. She worked and went to school online for the last 3 years to receive her bachelor's degree in elementary education. Her and her family moved from Minnesota to Kentucky, where she was employed as an instructional assistant. She continued working on her degree, graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Ed, and passed all the Kentucky required praxis assessments. She no longer lives in Minnesota. She did not complete the Minnesota assessments and did not obtain the Minnesota certificate.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Motion to.
Ms. Berry, do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4030, request to waive equivalent certification requirement for out-of-state prepared educator Hannah order. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next up is waiver L.
All right, this is the same one. This one's for Garrett Whitaker. He went to school in Indiana but resides in Kentucky. He completed an Indiana program for health and physical education, passed all the Kentucky assessments required. He does not plan to teach in Indiana, so he did not take the Indiana assessments, nor did he obtain the Indiana certificate.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve?
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4030, request to waive equivalent certification requirement for out-of-state prepared educator Garrett Whitaker. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Moving to waiver M.
Okay, this is to waive out-of-state recency requirement for Carla Owens. Scott County Schools is requesting a waiver on behalf of Carla Owens based on her continuous experience in North Carolina. She holds a valid North Carolina professional educator license for elementary education. She completed her teacher preparation program in 2005 and has been employed from August of 2005 through September of 2023 without a break in service. She has not completed any graduate credit within the past 5 years.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the Scott County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve waiver M.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4080, request to waive out-of-state recency requirement for Carla Owens. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next up is waiver N.
So this is also for out-of-state recency requirement. This one's for Kelly Matlock. She completed her elementary and special education program out of state. She obtained her Louisiana elementary and special ed certificate and taught in Louisiana from August of 2012 through May of 2019. Then she decided to stay home to care for her children. And they relocated to Kentucky last year, and she obtained the one-year recency certificate to teach in Kentucky. She taught for the 2022-23 school year, during which time she was supposed to complete the 6 semester hours of graduate credit. However, she had some family and medical circumstances and was unable to complete the coursework.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4080, request to waive out-of-state recency requirement for Kelly Matlock. Is there any discussion?
This one was one that was a little unique. Ms. Trueblood, would you want to explain how this one was a new precedence because of the lapse in continuous service?
Yes, so with the waivers of 4080, what the board had been looking at is the fact that these were, or this requirement was put in place when everyone was required to obtain rank 2. And as that is no longer a requirement, what the board has been looking at is if the individual had continuous service and out of state, then that was counting to meet the requirements and they could be issued the certificate. And you have directed staff to start working on the revisions to that regulation in accordance. Where this one was different was that she did have a 3-year break in service. And so in the last 5 school years, she would have only had 2 years of service. However, what the committee discussed with that is that she did have experience prior to taking that break. That break did also coincide with COVID, at a time when you all actually lowered the renewal requirements during that to account for those individuals that were not able to obtain in-person experience. So this one was a little different and likely not one that you will see again, but had she been an in-state applicant, because she does have that offer of employment, she would have, based on your action from July, been able to be issued a certificate in Kentucky. So that was all of the things that went into forming that decision, but it is a little different than the previous president that you had because she had a 3-year break in service.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I was gonna say, I think it's great that we allow people though to come and present their stories and like we really hear people out from a human perspective and consider all the things that happen in life. That's what we would want people to do for us. So I'm really proud to be a part of a board that does that. So thank you guys for your hard work.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. And next we have waiver O.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. I kind of feel like the closer on this. So this is an alternative student teaching placement request for Wesley Moore submitted by Morehead State University. Wesley Moore is a music education student at Morehead State University. He currently has a high school placement for fall 2023 semester. They were trying to get an elementary placement, but due to the fact that there's not many full-time teachers in the Russell Independent School District, they have requested that there be a middle school placement in its place.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Morehead State University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll need a motion.
Make the motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Wesley Moore. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Thank you all and the waiver committee for that. We are not finished with alternative routes though. So I don't want you to like think if you're in the audience here that we are almost finished, but not quite yet. So we have 5 alternative route to certification applications. These applicants are pursuing the option 1 exceptional work experience route to certification. This is one of the alternative routes established by the legislature in KRS 161048. An applicant with exceptional work experience must have an offer of employment from a local school district, a bachelor's or graduate degree meeting minimum GPA requirements, and an academic major or a passing score on the academic content assessment in the area in which certification is being sought. The board will need to determine if the applicant's work experience constitutes exceptional work experience. The applications are presented by Todd Davis.
Morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Item A is Kenton County Schools has submitted an option 1 application and portfolio for Miss Ariadne Antipa. The district is requesting that EPSB approve her application and certification in the area of music all grades. The application and portfolio are included in your board materials. Ms. Antipa holds a bachelor's degree in music and piano performance, a master's degree in music and piano pedagogy and performance, as well as a doctorate in musical arts. She has over 15 years experience teaching piano, voice, and keyboard lessons, as well as a variety of classes at the collegiate level. She has served as a music director, artistic director, and executive director for multiple music and theater arts performing groups throughout the United States and has received multiple awards in the area of music. The applicant meets the minimum GPA requirement in the academic area. Kenton County Public Schools has offered the applicant a position teaching music. Therefore, Kenton County is requesting that certification be awarded to Ms. Antipa for music all grades.
At this time, I will need a motion.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve the application for Ms. Antipa. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have application B.
Item B is Trimble County Schools has submitted option 1 application and portfolio for Miss Sarah Carnes. The district is requesting EPSB will approve her application and certification in the area of school media librarian, all grades, and the application and portfolio are included in your materials as well. Ms. Carnes holds a bachelor's degree in political science and communications, as well as a master's in library and information science. Ms. Carnes has over 10 years of experience where she served as the Trimble County Public Librarian, Jefferson County Public Library Program Coordinator, as well as Jefferson County Public Library Hanover Branch Manager. She is a member of the Kentucky Library Association and Association of Christian Librarians. Applicant meets the minimum GPA requirement in the academic area. Trimble County has offered a position for school media librarian and is requesting that she receive certification from EPSB for the school media librarian, all grades.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. The motion before the board is to approve the application for Sarah Carnes, school media librarian for all grades. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Moving to application C.
Item C is Jefferson County Public Schools has submitted an option 1 application and portfolio for Mr. Robert Nemus. The district is requesting his application and certification be approved for social studies grades 8 through 12. The materials are included in your board materials as well. Mr. Nemus holds a Juris Doctorate and has served 7 years as an associate attorney for Commonwealth Council Group, as well as Fulton, Devlin, and Powers, and additionally as an intern for the Kentucky Supreme Court. His experiences include all aspects of civil cases, overseeing depositions, filing motions, pleadings, as well as a variety of court hearings and trial arbitrations. The applicant meets the minimum GPA requirement in the academic area. Jefferson County Public Schools has offered a position in social studies. Therefore, Jefferson County is requesting certification be awarded to Mr. Nemus for social studies grades 8 through 12.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Make the motion to approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. The motion before the board is to approve the application for Robert Nemus, social studies grades 8 through 12. Is there any discussion?
I just have one point. Teaching experience for this applicant, civics and pre-law with Butler Traditional High School from August of 23 to the present. It states in there that once my exceptional work experience application is approved, the school and I plan to start a pre-law program. I just wonder if that's going to fall under OCTE and they could be certified through that route as well. Just a point to note on the board.
Yes, Mr. Davis has already had some conversations with that, with the OCT office as well about the pre-law certification that has to come through that route, but for the certification for social studies, that has to come through the option 1.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Application D.
Item D is also Jefferson County Public Schools submitted an application for Mr. John Owen, requesting certification in the area of English grades 8 through 12. The materials are included in your board materials. Mr. Owen holds a bachelor's degree as well as a master's degree in creative writing. He has over 15 years of experience as a marketing manager. As the head copywriter, he was responsible for writing and editing articles, ebooks, newsletters, video scripts, product descriptions, press releases, and web content. Mr. Owen has served as a freelance writer and content strategist for the Kentucky Foundation for Women. Has additional experience teaching writing at the collegiate level. The applicant meets the minimum GPA requirement in the academic area, and Jefferson County is requesting English certification for grades 8 through 12.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Weedman. The motion before the board is to approve the application for John Owen, English grades 8 through 12. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. And last, we have application E.
Item E is Scott County Schools has submitted an application for Miss Ari Veach in the area of agriculture grades 5 through 12. Ms. Veach holds a bachelor's degree in animal sciences and ag business, as well as a master's degree in positive youth development and science, translation, and outreach. She has over 10 years of experience in the agriculture field, serving as a 4-H youth development agent, where she planned and taught agricultural lessons to youth between the grades of 4 through 12. She provided learning centered around agriculture, natural sciences, natural resources, communication, STEM, animal nutrition, horticulture, agribusiness systems, and farm management. The applicant meets the minimum GPA requirements from the academic area. Therefore, Scott County is requesting certification in grades 5 through 12 for agriculture.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Lingo. The motion before the board is to approve the application for Ms. Veach for agriculture grades 5 through 12. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Thank you so much. I'll now open the floor to any board member for board comments. Does anyone have anything they wish to share?
I think we do it as a general set of circumstances every time, but thank you to all the staff for all the work in prepping the 8,000 versions of things we consider today.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Any other?
I'm kind of a nerd and I really love going through the waivers. I know it takes a while, but some of the most successful organizations are those who've made up with people of diversity of experiences. And so I love that people are coming from other workforces and our kids are getting to learn from their experiences. So I know it takes a lot of time and we get to hear a lot of things, but every time before we come, I read through it and get to see all the really cool things and people joining our workforce. So it's one of my favorite parts of EPSB. So thank you guys for your hard work on that, and to everyone that's coming and dedicating themselves to our schools and the communities.
Thank you. I'll just be honest, I'm glad we have diversity on our board because that is not one of my most favorite things to do. So I'm glad that we have people that really love their waiver process. So I just wanted to be honest with you all. Anything else out there?
Yeah. I just think people are brave now to take on a different responsibility that they can do and relate to students. I just think they're brave to take it on. You know, I admire that.
You know, as somebody who works in a building as an administrator where we hire people from industry for careers in teaching, it is helpful for that word to spread because we struggle to identify people like auto mechanics. When we had a waiver, a person on the waiver thing for auto mechanics teacher, and we just hired an auto mechanics teacher, and there are not automotive technology people out there going, I wonder what that district has for me in, you know, as far as teaching. And so figuring out ways to attract qualified individuals to the field of education, I think is something as a state we need to work on more. Like we try to put our jobs on Indeed and other steps like that, but even then they see teacher and they skip right over it, not understanding the processes that we have in place to I mean, I'm the head recruiter for our building, and I've had to fill a lot of those positions. And when they hear, you know, that how that happens, you know, and that we have systems in place through the Kentucky Department of Education to help them learn how to be a classroom teacher, you know, it is powerful, and students love hearing from and learning from people in industry. So if anyone's watching out there and is thinking about a career in education, you can call me. I'll talk you through it.
Everyone at this table is hiring.
Yes, everyone is.
Anyone else? All right. At this time, I believe we are ready to go into closed session pursuant to KRS 61810(1)C and J to conduct a character and fitness review and to review the potential actions relating to the complaints and reports. The board will also review pending litigation. At this time, I'll need a motion to go into closed session.
Should go into closed session.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. And do I have a second? Thank you, Captain Rosinski. The motion before the board is a motion to go into closed session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. We are now ready to go into closed session. At this time, I will need a motion to go into open session.
Make a motion to go back into open session.
Thank you, Ms. Now. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to go back into open session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, we are now back in open session. At this time, we will vote on those items discussed during closed session. For character and fitness, 1, approve. 2, deny. 3 through 11, approve. 12, deny. 13, 14, approve. 15, 16, approve. 17, 18, and 19, deny. 20 and 21, approve. For CA4, online character and fitness, 1 and 2, approve. 3, defer. 4, approve. 5, deny. 6, 7, 8, approve. 9, deny. 10 through 14, approve. 15, deny. 16 through 21, approve. 22, deny. 23 through 30, approve. 4, agreed orders, 1 through 41, accept. For findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended order and appeal rights, number 1, we accept the recommended order. For 2, we accept findings of facts, accept conclusions of law, and modify the recommended order to retain the permanent revocation but delete paragraphs A and 1. For 3, we accept the findings of fact, accept conclusions of law, accept recommended orders. For motions to reconsider, number 1, defer. 2, approve. 3, deny. And for educator cases, 1 through 9, attorney review. 10, defer for training, appropriate use of technology training. 11, defer for training, ethics training. 12, 13, and 14, attorney review. 15, admonish. 16 through 25, attorney review. 26, dismiss without prejudice. 27, attorney review. 28, defer for training, ethics, and confidentiality training. 29, attorney review. 30, dismiss with prejudice. 31 and 32, attorney review. 33, dismiss with prejudice. 34, attorney review. 35, admonish. 36 through 39, attorney review. 40 and 41, dismiss with prejudice. 42 through 45, attorney review. 46, admonish. 47, dismiss with prejudice. 48 through 52, admonish. 53, defer for training, OEA, recommended training. 54, defer for training, OEA, recommended training. 55, defer for training, admin code training. 56 and 57, dismiss with prejudice. 58, attorney review. 59 and 60, dismiss with prejudice. 61, defer for training, admin code training. 62 through 65, dismiss with prejudice. 66 through 73, refer to hearing. 74 and 75, dismiss with prejudice. 76 and 77, dismiss without prejudice. 78 and 79, dismiss with prejudice. 80, dismiss without prejudice. 81, dismiss with prejudice. 82, dismiss without prejudice. 83, dismiss with prejudice. 84, admonish. 85, 86, and 87, dismiss with prejudice. 88 through 91, admonish. 92, dismiss with prejudice. 93 through 106, admonish. And 107, dismiss with prejudice.
Chair Mitchell, I just had a clarifying question on character and fitness number 4. It was approved with conditions.
Approved with conditions. That is correct. My apology. So character and fitness number 4, approved with conditions. Thank you for that. Catch anything else that I may have missed or overlooked? All right, at this time, we will go around and vote, starting with Vice Chair Wheaton.
Chair Whedon,
Lisa Rudzinski on agreed order number 4. I dissent, agree to the rest.
Elijah Edwards, I have to recuse on educator case 11, and I agree on all others.
James Cousins, agree on all.
CJ Fryer, agree on all.
Jacqueline Mayfield, agree on all.
Amanda Ellis, agree on all.
Amy Lingo, agree on all.
Diane Berry, agree on all.
Meredith Pittman, recuse on educator case 11, approve on all.
Amber Snell, agree on all.
Oh, and Justin Mitchell, approve on all. All right. At this time, I will need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Second by Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. We are now adjourned.